During and shortly after World War II, it was nearly impossible to buy a farm tractor. Now, there were several resourceful farmers and others who resorted to building their own. This is an example of one person's efforts. There were a set of plans published in 1939 by Popular Mechanics magazine, with a second printing in 1941, as well as a set in the Motor Mechanics magazine. They published similar plans about how to construct a tractor like this. Now, this concept was so popular that Sears and Roebuck Company actually sold kits by mail that included some basic parts as well as plans to convert a Ford car or truck into a tractor. This particular tractor used a Model AA 1-ton Ford truck engine matched up with his 4-speed transmission, rear differential, and rear wheels as the powertrain. Then they added the radiator, surround, and front pedestal from a Ford Model A car. The gas tank is from a Ford Model T car. As if this wasn't already enough variety of parts in this tractor, the steering wheel, shaft, and gearbox is from some form of a Chevrolet vehicle from that era. Some of the wiring, the generator, and rear tires have been replaced, but every other part on this tractor is as it was found by the Heinz family in Pennsylvania. This is a John Deere Type W Model 111 engine. Now, this particular engine is based on the highly popular John Deere Model D tractor engine. The engine itself has only 2 cylinders and yet displaces 501 cubic inches. That means a single cylinder has a cubic inch capacity that is nearly equal to most modern day cars. It achieves this amazing feat by having a piston that is 6 3/4 inches in diameter, and it moves 7 inches on each stroke. The massive engine weighs over 2 tons and it has been tested and rated at 42 horsepower. When these engines were first produced, they ran at only 800 RPM and produced only 27 horsepower. The version you see went into production in 1933. They increased the RPM to 900 RPM, and that increased the horsepower. Engines like this found a wide variety of uses on the farm and other places. For example, the Type W engine would power a cotton mill, run irrigation pumps, operating as power for oil wells, power air compressors, and a wide variety of other operations that needed an internal combustion engine power. Now, the farmer found this type of power to be a great asset on the farm when put to use running thrashing machines, feed grinders, water pumps, etc. They were popular on the farm for a limited time because of the advent of the tractor. The tractor was basically a power engine like this that had wheels and could easily be moved and did many of the same jobs this engine did without the difficulty of having to be towed around from job to job. The Graham Page Fraser Farm Equipment Company designed the Fraser Model T garden tractor in 1948. Now, they contracted with the Jocks Power Saw Company of Denison, Texas to build the chassis, which was then shipped to York, Pennsylvania. There, Fraser installed engines built by Bell Aircraft Company. This was, to say the least, a very complex arrangement between 3 companies in 3 different states. A very unique feature of the Mite is the aluminum hood. The company made them from leftover airplane wing parts that, with the end of World War II, were considered military surplus. The company was fairly successful and they built around 3,000 of these tractors. Then in 1949, the company was sold to Ottawa Manufacturing of Ottawa, Kansas. They continued to build and market the Mite tractor. According to a Mite brochure, the tractor had 6.1 horsepower. The L-head single-cylinder engine that was coupled with a 3-speed forward and 1 reverse gear transmission. The company provided a reasonable number of implements and attachments for the tractor. The brochure that we have shows a seed planter, a mower, cultivator, disc harrow, turning plow, and trailer, all built by Jocks Manufacturing for the mighty Mite. One overly exuberant ad claims, and I quote, "The mighty Mite can farm crop hand, haul crops, haul livestock to market, clear brush, fall trees, cut cordwood, grade fire barrier lines, build private roads, and level building sites." Keep in mind it has a 6 horsepower motor. You'll have to make your own opinion as to whether that could really happen. The Silver King was built in a small town of Plymouth, Ohio by the Fate Heath Company. The company had a long history of building locomotives, mining equipment, and even some trucks in 1909. In the early 1930s, orders for locomotives were lagging, so the company decided to try building tractors with some of the parts they had that fit the locomotives. So they built a tractor and they called it the Plymouth because they were built in Plymouth, Ohio. Well, they soon became embroiled in a legal battle with the giant Chrysler Corporation, who were beginning to produce a car by the same name. Chrysler sued Fate Heath about the name and lost. Now, Chrysler was in a bind because they were already making cars with the Plymouth name on them. So they finally agreed to buy the rights to the name from Fate Heath for an undisclosed sum that is rumored to have been in the millions. Given it was in the middle of the Depression, that was a very large settlement. Well, Fate Heath could no longer call theirs the Plymouth, but because the tractor was silver in color, they decided to call it the Silver King. They produced tractors until 1953, when they sold the tractor division to a West Virginia company that eventually phased out production in 1955. The company claimed the tractor had 25 horsepower, but official tests were never completed. It was considered very modern because it had electric lights, an electric starter, and a horn, along with a very fast high gear that was not present on any other tractor in that era. That fact, along with its almost legendary lack of traction and power, caused some of the owners to say, and I quote, "It could blow the hat off your head, but it couldn't pull it off." The seat location behind the rear axle caused it to ride very, very rough. And this particular tractor was restored by Clark County Cy Circle, and after his passing, he passed it on to his grandsons. How big is a garden? That was the question posed in the sales literature by the Shaw Tractor Company when it offered this R12 tractor for sale. The tractor was larger than the traditional garden tractor, but it was a bit smaller than what was considered a farm tractor. The do-all was powered by a 2-cylinder, air-cooled Wisconsin engine that pumped out 12 horsepower. It was the top of the Shaw line and in direct competition with the John Deere L and LA, as well as the Farmall Cub that were popular in that era. Shaw contended that their tractor could do the same jobs more economically than the full-size tractor. The original Shaw line of garden tractors were mainly walk-behind models. By 1953, these models were replaced by riding tractors, of which the R12 was the largest. Company literature said the R12 could handle a 14-inch moldboard plow in most soil conditions. They produced accessories and implements that included hydraulic kits, cultivators, sickle bar mowers, disc harrow, disc plows, hauling carts, hay rigs, lawn mowers, snow plows, bulldozer blades, planters, sprayers, and loaders were also available. The R12 has a wheelbase of 60 inches and it is mounted on a 7-inch by 24-inch rear tire, and the front tires are 4-inch by 12-inch, which gives the tractor a 24-inch clearance for cultivating. The transmission is described as a selective sliding gear synchronous automotive type transmission. It kind of means it's a regular transmission. Speeds range from 2.5 to 7 miles an hour, and it weighed in 1,150 pounds without any accessories or attachments. The Long Model A was only modestly successful during its heyday, but it is a much sought-after tractor by antique tractor collectors today. In 1948, Long Manufacturing of Tarboro, North Carolina began building its first tractor, aptly named the Long Model A. It was basically patterned after the highly successful Farmall H, and as you look at it you can see some similarities. But it was powered by a much larger Continental F-140 engine, which gave it approximately 34 horsepower compared to the H's 25 horsepower. Long was basically made by taking already proven parts and putting them together in their tractor. In addition to the purchased engine, the rear end and transmission was a Timken design unit, which was already being used in both the Cockshutt 30 and the Shepherd Model SD5. In the late 60s, Long imported Neufeld tractors from England. They repainted them and sold them as Long model tractors. Then later in the 70s, they turned to buying tractors from Romania and then reselling them as Long tractors. While during that same time, they collaborated with Czechoslovakia and imported Zetter tractors that, after being imported, were repainted and became known as Long 900 and Long 1100 model tractors. The company, in financial trouble, was taken over by a company from India in 1998. They began selling tractors and implements under the name FarmTrack. The new company struggled and eventually went bankrupt in 2008. At that time, the assets were purchased by the Montana Tractor Company. During the 1930s and the Depression, a father and son, Lewis and Walter Brockway, farmed and tinkered in the tiny community of Auburn, which is a few miles southeast of Chagrin Falls in the Cleveland area. It seems likely that they ran some type of repair shop. One source claims Lewis was a sub-dealer for a Chagrin Falls Chevrolet automobile dealer. About 1937, the two put together a small four-wheel garden tractor using a Chevy four-cylinder engine and transmission. The little tractor caught on locally, and the American Garden Tractor Company was born. It built 20 or so tractors per year. It appears that some of the machines were called Americans and others were called Brockway, and at that time they were painted red. The Brockways formed the Leader Tractor Company in 1940 and designed a larger, heavier tractor, still with a Chevy engine, and they named it the Leader. They successfully built and marketed several different models of the Leader tractor. The Schott brothers, owning a large string of car dealerships across Ohio, handled and marketed all Leader tractors. Sales were strong, so the Schotts loaned Brockways a large sum of money to build a new, large, efficient manufacturing facility. Unfortunately, the loan they made had a pay-on-demand clause, and in 1949, for reasons known only to them, the Schott brothers called the loan, forced Brockway to sell everything to Schott. The Schotts closed the plants and scrapped all remaining inventory. Well, the Brockway family promptly started again in Bedford, Ohio. They built a much better tractor that they called the Brockway. They painted it yellow with red wheels. Production continued at a very slow pace until production ceased in 1959. Less than 500 of the tractors were produced during that 10-year span. The New Holland Company was well known for its high-quality haymaking equipment after World War II, and it remains a leader in the industry today. There was a strong demand for balers that were powered in one of two ways. If the tractor pulling the baler lacked a PTO or did not have sufficient power to operate both the tractor and baler, a gas engine was mounted on the baler and it provided power for the baler. If the tractor pulling the baler had a PTO and sufficient power, a gearbox unit on the baler became the power source to operate it through the tractor's PTO. In 1956, the company made a decision to build a baler that was totally self-propelled unit. They speculated that farmers would buy such a machine because it would free up a tractor for other uses connected to the haying operation and other field work during the summer. It was their vision that farmers would buy these in the same fashion that they were buying self-propelled combines during the time. They weren't right. This Model 166 baler is one of only 305 such balers ever made. While they did continue for a period of time to build and offer other self-propelled models, the concept never really caught on in terms of sales. This baler with serial number 1220 features two Wisconsin air-cooled motors. One runs the drive wheels, while the other motor operates the actual baler itself. It has a 4-speed transmission, hydraulic brakes, a cock-shut front end, and an International Harvester rear axle. This particular baler continues to be totally operational and actually baled hay just weeks before it was videoed. When this tractor arrived on a trailer at the current owner's home to be restored, the owner's wife announced it was the ugliest tractor she'd ever seen. After it was restored, she admitted it wasn't totally ugly. Now that it's restored and has a set of restored cultivators attached, she concedes that it is kind of cute. The production history of the Allis-Chalmers G somewhat follows the same scenario. The G was first produced in 1948, and they made a whopping 6 tractors. After a slow start, they began to gain popularity among tobacco farmers and small vegetable operations. Eventually, those in agriculture discovered a variety of uses, and the company ended up selling nearly 30,000 tractors before production ended in 1956. The G has a Continental motor that produces only 10 horsepower and has a top speed of 7.5 miles per hour. It originally sold for $700 with an optional belt pulley and PTO. The company produced a full line of equipment that all mounted between the front and rear wheels. If imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, the G was truly flattered. Following its wide acceptance, at least 4 other American companies and several overseas companies began to produce similar rear engine with tractors with mid-mount implements. The Allis-Chalmers G is highly sought after by collectors today. While restorable tractors are difficult to locate, finding restorable implements is even more difficult. Both tractors and implements bring many times the original $700 price paid to a dealer some 70 years ago if you want to purchase one to restore today. No, this is not a joke, and it's not a restoration done by a colorblind person. This restored Farmall Cub came from the factory painted white rather than the traditional Farmall red. As the late Paul Harvey would say, and now the rest of the story. In 1950, the brass at International Harvester agreed to a plan by the marketing department to draw attention to the Farmall line of tractors by painting some of them white. Each dealer was sent at least one of each model tractor painted white. The instructions to the dealer were to take the white tractor out into the community and use it as a demonstrator to draw attention to the Farmall line of tractors and implements. The dealer was then, at the company's expense, supposed to repaint the tractor red before they sold it. So how is it that this one is still white, you might ask? Well, some customers insisted the tractor be left white, while it was rumored that some dealers collected the repaint fee from the company, but they left the tractors white and sold them that way. No matter what the story, it is a fact that some were put to use on the farm and to this day remain white Farmalls. The story on this particular tractor is that the owner has many Cub tractors and is well known as a Cub collector throughout the Ohio area, as well as the nation. He received a call from a man who wanted to sell this Cub. He wasn't real interested until the man mentioned that somebody had messed around and painted this one white. Well, he asked for the serial number, and through that he determined it was in fact an original white demonstrator and made the purchase. And what you see in this tractor is a restoration of the tractor to its original showroom condition. The engineering products company, under the name they were known as EPCO, EPCO for Engineering Products Company, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, began manufacturing economy tractors in 1946, and they continued the operation until 1990. During the 60s and 70s, a smaller tractor came along that was called the Jim Dandy, and a larger version was called the Power King. In the mid-70s, they all became known as Power King. They have a unique model numbering system. The model number on each tractor is a combination of the size of the rear wheel and the horsepower. Thus, a Power King 1614 model would have 16-inch rear wheels and a 14 horsepower engine. Now, they also made models that had 24-inch rear wheels. But EPCO manufactured several lines of tractors, including the Power King, the Jim Dandy, the Red E, Country Squire, oh yes, and Power Queen that they marketed specifically for women to use, and a Terramite that had a front end loader and a backhoe. The company also had numerous attachments that were available, making these a true all-purpose small tractor. This particular tractor was acquired by its owner when she was residing near Grand Rapids, Michigan in about 2005. Having moved to a home with 4 acres of property, she was pleased to have a larger mower. It also came with a snow blower, plow, disc, and front blade. When she moved back home to the New Carlisle area in 2012, she brought the Power King along, and it's being used for general hauling and moving things around the farm. Also plows snow from the driveway in the winter, and its most important use, is to provide a tractor for the grandkids to drive around when they visit. There has been no restoration done on this tractor. This is the original condition, and such tractors that are displayed in this manner are often referred to as being shown in their working clothes. A man had a tractor he wanted to get rid of, and he asked George Gentner to take a look at it. When George got to the place, there was so much stuff piled on top of the tractor he could hardly see it. He thought it was some kind of a drag race tractor with the engine mounted in the rear of the unit, but he eventually bought it and took it home. Once he got it home, he did some routine maintenance work on it and began using it as a belly miller. He eventually left it in his barn and covered it with a tarp. A few years later, a friend was putting together a tractor show and knew George had some type of odd tractor. When the friend stopped by to see if George would be willing to put the tractor in his show, George uncovered the John Blue G1000. They began researching the history of the John Blue Company, which is well known for their sprayer and fertilizer pumps. As a result, it was learned that only 200 of these tractors were ever built. With its Farmall Cub motor, the target market for the tractor was the small farmer who were growing crops such as tobacco and vegetables on small acreage. The problem became that the initial cost of these very heavy-built, sturdy tractors was nearly $5,000, and that was much too high, because farmers and others could buy similar tractors, such as the Allis-Chalmers G, for less than $1,000. Thus, the company was unable to establish a sales market for the G1000, originally. Then became another major problem for the John Blue Company. They developed an attachment that you could hook on the John Blue that would allow it to use all of the Allis-Chalmers G implements being built by the Allis-Chalmers Company. That was enough for Allis-Chalmers Company. They filed a lawsuit for infringement of patent rights against the John Blue Company. Instead of fighting it, the John Blue Company just said, "We quit making them. We won't do it anymore." Research now reveals that of the original 200 tractors built, it is estimated that only about 20 of them still exist today. Edward Huber grew up in Indiana, and at an early age he invented a hay rake. He moved to Marion, Ohio to begin manufacturing that rake in 1865. His brother joined him later, and they formed the Huber Company. A steam traction engine was Huber's next major invention. From 1863 to 1898, Huber received over 100 different patents, and his company grew by leaps and bounds. He was producing everything from hay rakes to steam engines. In 1866, the company began producing steam-powered road rollers and other construction equipment. During this time, he bought out a Cincinnati company that was producing gas engines. He built about 30 of the engines, and they did not suit him. So, he went to work at the drawing board and invented his own engine, which he put into production as he re-entered the tractor business. The business continued to produce high-quality internal combustion tractors until World War II, when they made the decision to focus all their resources on road and construction machinery. In 1977, a company bought out the Huber Company, sold the road construction business to a firm in nearby Galion, Ohio, and it completely ceased all operations in 2002. This particular tractor is a Huber 1520 Super 4 cross motor. Cross motor indicates the motor sits crossways compared to the traditional engine. It runs from one rear wheel across to the other rear wheel. This particular engine was put on a horsepower testing machine recently, and this 100-year-old restored tractor produced an amazing 32 horsepower. That's a tribute to both the tractor's quality construction and its owner, John Yowler's ability to restore antique farm equipment. The interesting note about this particular tractor, the tractor actually belongs to the Huber Machinery Museum in Marion, Ohio. It has spent its entire life in Marion County. The tractor has sat for 30 to 40 years when John agreed to take it to his shop and bring it back to life. The results of his efforts are a perfectly functioning machine that you see here in this video. Both the Cleveland Tractor Company and the B.F. Avery Company were manufacturing this model tractor and selling it under another name. The tractors they were selling were called the General. Cleveland Tractor would discontinue making wheel tractors in the 1920s and move production to, at that time, the revolutionary crawler tractor. The Cleveland Tractor would become famous for their line of crawler tractors that were marketed under the name Cle-Trac and used to play on the company name of Cleveland and Tractor to name that style of tractor. Well, during this time, the Montgomery Ward Catalog Company agreed to sell Cleveland's tractors if they painted them a different color and they gave it a new name. So the company said, okay. They painted it red instead of their traditional yellow, and they named it the Ward Twin Row Tractor. And it sold through the Montgomery Ward mail order catalog in 1939 for $595. The tractor is powered by a Hercules engine that produced 19 horsepower, and it was considered a two-plow tractor, thus the name Twin Row. Montgomery Ward was able to sell the tractors at a reasonable price, but they lacked a dealership and a service network which could provide services and repair to the tractors, and that proved to be the downfall of their attempts to sell farm tractors and implements through a mail-order catalog. The tractor in this video was restored by the late Cy Circle, who was Jeffrey's grandfather. After Cy passed, Jeffrey's grandmother, the late Marla Circle, gave Jeffrey this tractor in 2015. Jeffrey has a young son named after his grandfather, and he gifted the Montgomery Ward twin row to him. That will make young Cy Troxell the fourth generation to own this tractor.